Is it wrong to relate to fictional characters? No, of course it's not wrong. Characters and the stories which they inhabit are in some way representative of aspects of the real world, and since characters are typically written to act like real people, it is inevitable that at least some of the many stories one consumes would contain a character that is similar to themselves in a meaningful way. That meaningful part of the sentence I just wrote while sitting on the floor of my mom's living room under the lights of the Christmas tree, 3 days until Christmas, Merry Christmas everyone, that meaningful word is important. Oftentimes, when we relate to the struggles of a character, we can find ways to work through those struggles in real life by viewing what happens to the character, either by seeing what the character does to improve themselves, seeing what a character does to destroy themselves and then avoiding that, or through a realization of another way that you could work through your problem, which could only be achieved by viewing your situation through the abstracted third-person perspective of saying, OMG, literally me, while watching Bocchi the Rock on break from university after hanging out with friends from back home and still being too awkward to consistently, confidently converse with them. Also, it's just comforting and good to know that you are not the only person dealing with the things you are dealing with. Relating to fictional characters is valuable because it not just provides a sense of comfort, but can also point you towards a path of positive growth. So why do people on the internet make fun of each other for it? Bocchi the Rock is a really good show. On top of the baseline of being just generally entertaining, it is also one of the best portrayals of social anxiety that I have seen in any piece of media ever. Not only does it masterfully express how it feels to be in the mindset of the main character, it also uses the wonderful side characters to show less shy people how they can make any Bocchis in their life feel more comfortable. I wonder what her personality type is. It is hilarious, cathartic, emotional, and creative, all while actually just being a slice of life show about some high school girls. It's the second coming of K-On!, but it makes its purpose clear from the start so that people won't be able to miss it as easily, and it's also kinda insane. And that's a fucking Evangelion reference. It is art. Though, before I watched it, even though I had heard how good it was, I was hesitant to put on the first episode because I couldn't stop thinking about this comment. Fight Club is a movie about how in rebellion against a society that makes them feel estranged or without purpose, men are susceptible to radicalization and falling into replications of the structures they thought they were fighting against. Watch the Folding Ideas video about it. Don't be scared by the title, it's a good analysis. A lot of people don't understand Fight Club, which is made obvious by the fact that so many people actually worship the film's villain, Tyler Durden. Like, it isn't even subtext or something that this guy is the villain. The final battle is literally a fight against him. Tyler Durden is representative of the ideas that Fight Club is trying to speak against, and yet people find themselves looking up to him, wanting to be him. This makes Mr. Tyler one of the many characters that people seem to like as if they are good even though they are intended as bad, joining the ranks of Patrick Bateman, Walter White, the Joker, Jake Gyllenhaal, and the guy from The Wolf of Wall Street. I wonder what his personality type is. The fundamental misunderstanding of these characters leads them to being seen as cool, and we all want to be cool. So, of course, people start trying to act like these characters or proclaim themselves to already be like them. This can really just happen with any character. I think it's natural for a lot of people to consciously or subconsciously search for aspects of characters which they might share and craft kind of like a narrative in their mind of how similar they are to the characters they see. Then, if a character is perceived as cool by a lot of people, it makes sense that people would try to find more aspects of themselves in that character or even adjust their behavior to better match that character. And of course, memes are made about this. Additionally, there are actually more characters that people find widely relatable than just famous Western media psychopaths. And so lots of characters get put in similar memes implying a sense of relatability to them, whether it be more genuine or for more comedic purposes. These characters tend to be loners because a lot of people on the internet aren't super satisfied with their in-person social life. And a lot of these characters tend to also be cool guy loners because people tend to want to see themselves in characters who are cool but also relatable to them. These relatability memes can all be summed up by the phrase, "he just like me, for real." There are kind of two different ways this meme is used. One of them is more positive. A character does something or has some trait displayed and a real person states, "he just like me for real." The statement of the immortal phrase is a somewhat sarcastic remark about the character and the one speaking. The fictional character probably does have at least some significant trait that the speaker also has, and so the speaker proclaims that they are in fact the same person. The versatility of this meme is actually kind of incredible. It can be a sarcastic exaggeration of the similarities between a real person and a character. It might draw attention to a more deviant trait that the speaker shares, empathize with the character in a self-deprecating way, usually horniness, or it can actually just express the speaker's feeling that they truly are very similar to this fictional character, but mask this with some comedy in order to not be too emotionally genuine and vulnerable. The other way this meme is used is not a sole speaker talking about themselves in relation to a character, but instead involves the speaker talking about another person who has related themselves to a character and then making a joke at the expense of that person. We start with someone expressing a sense of relatability to a character, and then the speaker comes along and says, "He just like me for real," derogatory. You will also often see this with pictures of like nerds or funny looking drawings. The point is to suggest that either an immediate target or some anonymous group of people aren't really that similar to the character and are actually just convincing themselves that they are because they want to be that character. Implications of unjustified projection onto the character and or an attempt at presenting a cool facade. Now, I'm not trying to be the joke police or anything. I'm not gonna shoot you if you post one of these memes, but I could. I know where you live. I can see you right now. I just think it's important to recognize that these two versions of the literally me meme communicate different things. One is a speaker talking about themselves. The other is a speaker making fun of others. The problem for me is these two versions of the meme are so similar that people on the internet have unknowingly become confused. The self-targeting version was being used on all sorts of characters for many different reasons, and even spoke to a kind of heightened media literacy and people self-reflecting through viewing fictional characters. Meanwhile, we were also able to make fun of people for having distorted egos. Everyone lived in harmony. But then, the Sigma male grindset memes attacked. Suddenly, there was potential for both memes to be used in the same context. With the rise of people claiming to be Sigma males and comparing themselves to paragons of virtue like Patrick Bateman and Tyler Durden, the most obvious thing that could happen is people making fun of them for it. "He just like me for real," derogatory. But there are other ways this same phrase might end up being used in a meme. For example, a reasonable person watches American Psycho and sees that Patrick Bateman is kind of fucked up. I am nothing like this guy, so it would be funny if I said I was exactly like him. Or this reasonable person might watch the movie and recognize that Patrick Bateman is a bit too silly. However, on a deeper level, they might recognize the societal/cultural issues that led to Patrick having the mindset that he does, and our reasonable person might relate to feeling some of the pressure from those same issues. Therefore, he just like me for real. Non-derogatory. Two memes meant to communicate similar but different meanings have come together into an unholy mixture. The distinction between them has become fuzzier, and there is now potential for people's worldviews to be affected without them realizing it and without the intention of anyone. Think about this. Marinette here has seen a lot of these memes, but maybe she's just seen more of the negative ones, or she just finds them a bit funnier, and so subconsciously her mind has put a bit more weight towards those negative ones. Because of this, when she starts seeing memes that aren't in the negative way, but still have similar taglines, her brain might still interpret them as being negative, and so, over time, she is exposed to more and more instances of memes talking about relating to characters, and each time she is interpreting it as cringe, and so eventually, all expression of relatability to fictional characters is cringe. Always. When I see this comment, I have to wonder, what was the intention of the person saying this? Were they making a joke simply implying that Shinji was relatable, and therefore connecting with what I had said and bolstering my point about Evangelion being a more realistic portrayal of growth? Or were they making a joke at the expense of me and others, making fun of people for relating our experiences to that of a fictional character? December 29th, 2022. After watching a funny clip of Bocchi trying to pretend to be extroverted, I scroll down to the comment section and find this comment. "Bocchi and Denji are the relatable characters this season, lol. I think to myself, haha, this is somewhat humorous. For some reason, I feel a dark force from beyond this realm compel me to open the replies to this comment, and I am horrified to see people saying shit like, how do you get relatable to Denji? Denji is a horrible character to relate to. Bro,
tried to
Denji is the no dad, no mom,
they just like me for real.
Kageyama, Shinji's family not friends type of life is Denji. I was laughing hard when I saw every just like barf emoji. Barf emoji. Part 1. What the fuck? Why? There are two types of comments in this chain which I don't like. And the first is these people who are trying to like police what characters someone is allowed to relate to. The first commenter said that Bocchi and Denji are relatable characters, implying they relate to both of them, obviously, and another commenter has taken issue with this, saying Denji is a horrible character to relate to. There's obviously a disconnect between these two commenters. The second person has focused in on some morally negative aspects of Denji, such as his possible objectification of women or disregard for human life. If someone says they relate to Denji, they must be saying that they also do these bad things, and therefore it is bad to relate to Denji. However, the first person probably just recognized some normal piece of themselves in the character of Denji, probably something like Denji's desire for sexual intimacy, or maybe Denji's poverty, desire for a better life, or tendency to let others dominate him, something that wasn't necessarily a harmful action or mindset against others. This situation is complicated by the fact that the second commenter was probably acting at least somewhat in good faith. If we think back to Tyler Durden from The Fight Club, it's easier to see why expressing relatability to a character who does bad stuff might be seen as cringe. Mr. Tyler is pretty messed up, and I guess Denji is too in some ways. People expressing that they relate to these characters might imply that they hold harmful beliefs or intentions. The thing is, there's no reason to assume that someone relates to a character just because of the bad stuff. There are people in this comment chain talking about how they relate to Denji because they were literally homeless or had to lick a trash can just to get money to buy food. So I mean, like, who are you to tell people they can't relate to this character? You do not know what other people have gone through, and your tunnel vision on whatever bad stuff Denji has done is blocking you off from understanding other people. I think I was a bit harsh on Tyler Durden fans when I wrote the last section of the video. I said some stuff about how they didn't really understand the movie and that the movie is speaking out against him, but I think I should clarify that there are valid things that he says and does, like he's anti-consumerism and he's kind of giving these men a sense of belonging. That's good, I like that. And he's also helping them develop self-worth and confidence and a better sense of how they should be spending their time. So we've solved this, right? When people say they relate to characters like Denji or the Fight Club guy, Walter White, etc., they aren't saying they relate to the bad aspects of these characters. They relate to stuff like the desire for greatness, disillusion towards the modern world, or other stuff. And if they actually did relate to the truly bad things these characters have done, then that would be bad. Except no, I don't agree with that either. Even if someone was saying they related to a character because of some fucked up shit they did, I wouldn't say that that was a bad thing in every scenario. Let me explain. Let's imagine a guy, call him Meth Man, who makes cocaine. Let's say he started doing this after being diagnosed with cancer, and he wants to pay off the medical bills with the drug money. But then, well beyond the point at which he could have just stopped, he's still making drugs and murdering people. He's a pretty bad guy, for sure. No debate on that. But then, he watches this TV show, Breaking Bad, and finds out that he relates a lot to the main character, Walter White. And by the end of the series, Meth Man recognizes that Walter was really doing all this drug stuff just because it made him feel powerful and important, and was trying to make up for the years of feeling overlooked that had come before. This causes Meth Man to realize that he was actually doing the same thing, and that continuing down the path of building a drug empire will actually end up destroying his family. And so, he shuts down his drug business and spends the rest of his life peacefully with his family. I don't think that it would be simply bad for Meth Man to say he relates to Walter White, even though what he means by that is, I also made and sold drugs and murdered people for selfish reasons. Relating to Walter White allowed Meth Man to self-reflect and turn his life around for the better, which I think is a good thing. If Meth Man did not end up changing himself after Breaking Bad, then I think that would be pretty bad. But to me, it seems clear that it's not bad to relate to a character who has done bad things, as long as the relating is used to direct oneself towards the good. People say the same shit about Shinji Ikari. Like, Shinji has done some fucked up shit, but his character is a very good portrayal of the effects of social isolation and abandonment. Many people relate to the way he acts around other people, even if they haven't been abandoned by their father, and them relating to this character does not necessarily mean they relate to his sometimes selfish or problematic views of human intimacy or masturbating over the body of an unconscious girl. And even if they do relate to those more messed up aspects of the character, I don't think we should view that as just bad, as long as they recognize that their actions were bad, because that's just basic self-reflection. I see no problem with people recognizing their flaws, current or former, in the stories of others, and I don't think we should shame people for doing so either. Plus, I think it says something about our society when so many people are saying they relate to these characters who are very clearly representations of how existing systems and our culture are negatively affecting people. By thinking about why people relate to these characters, we can find ways we could change society in order to help these people in good ways. Of course, we're not going to do exactly what they want. We should not concede our society to people like Tyler Durden or Patrick Bateman or Shinji Ikari, but these pieces of media agree with that. The narrator kills Tyler Durden, but society is also destroyed in order to make room for a better one. Look at these ducks. They need help. Something is seriously wrong with them. Okay, back to the shitty YouTube comments. Part 2. What the fuck? Why? There's also this weird mindset I've noticed that voicing relatability to a character at all is just like illogical or cringe always. Look at these replies. This guy seems genuinely curious. How do you get relatable to Denji? They get a response. Life is shit sometimes, literally. Overweight Asian here still doesn't get it and says, but Denji is the no dad, no mom, thousands of debt, lost several organs, only Pochita is his family and friend type of life is shit. This comment has been edited and now says, Denji and Bocchi is very relatable and my opinions are wrong. So, character development, I guess. This commenter is confused, basically because how could someone say Denji is relatable when his life circumstances are so uniquely extreme? This is a view that seems pretty common. It's very unlikely that anyone's life is exactly 100% like that of a fictional character. That might be kind of creepy. Except, that's not what relating to a character means. The vast majority of people are not saying that they are literally these characters, and even when they actually say literally me, it's clear to me that they're being hyperbolic for comedic effect. Expressing relatability to a character just means that you share some trait or life circumstance with them, which is significant enough for you to want to communicate with others. Denji is horny? Me too. I can make a meme out of this. That comment felt like someone was genuinely trying to understand where the original commenter was coming from, but this next one is more of a kind of sad attempt at talking down to others. Okay, well, I have a question. What your favorite character next season? Are you going to change your personality every season? My immediate reaction to this comment is, what the fuck is this guy talking about? User unbear. Cocaine Bear! Coming to theaters this February. Be there or be there. I think I understand where this comment is coming from. Over the years, the internet has had its fair share of people who think certain characters are so cool that they want to literally be them. The anime fandom especially has had some famous examples of this, and famous examples of it being made fun of. But also, more recently, we've seen the same kind of thing with the Sigma male stuff. User Unbearable1583 seems to view the original commenter's expression of a connection to these fictional characters as being an example of this niche trend, and that it is born of fickle emotions which will die off once the next cool seasonal anime characters arrive. Except, of course, obviously this is not what the original commenter is doing. I don't think this even needs explanation. I'm just gonna move on. I think these comments also give off a vibe of like the accusation of projection. They feel like they're implying that the original commenter's feeling of relatability to Denji and Bocchi comes from projecting themselves onto the characters and not actually because they are similar. If you look back earlier in your notes for this lecture, you will recall that this was also a thing with Tyler Durden from the Fight Club and the other Sigma male type dudes. We know that it is possible that other people might just be projecting themselves onto a character to feel more cool or whatever Bocchi is. Except, relating to fictional characters is not something born purely out of misguided projection onto them. Sure, it's possible that a lot of these people who make this type of post aren't being completely genuine, but there are definitely people who are being true to themselves. I do not know this person. I can't know if they really do or do not have reason to relate to Denji and Bocchi. So, I mean, without any evidence to accuse them of being disingenuous, I think it's kind of pointlessly confrontational and negative to just randomly say that they're basically lying. And what if they are telling the truth? How might this baseless accusation affect the vibes of their day? Okay, that's enough thinking about YouTube comments. I'm done. Am I overthinking this? I am definitely overthinking this. Why are bags of chips so fucking loud? So yeah, I got around to watching Bocchi eventually, and it was great. Sure, a lot of my enjoyment came from me thinking, haha, I do that. But you know what? Fuck you. I like what I like, I do what I want. I'm the reason why your socks disappear, and I see no reason to feel ashamed for enjoying relatable humor. Plus, this show's writing is more than competent. Even a lot of the comedy has aspects of genuine emotion behind it. And I literally can't watch a show without comparing it to my own life or the real world. I understand everything through media. When I get a nosebleed, I can't help but wonder, am I horny or is this cyberpsychosis? I've had a lot of experiences that can be summed up by this first scene, wanting to make connections and have fun with others, but suddenly being unsure if it would be okay for me to do such a thing, leading to indecision, lack of action, and no close friends. This scene didn't really surprise me though. Lots of shows start with this kind of short backstory for a character, only to not really expand on it much afterwards. This only made me more impressed with Bocchi when I saw that they actually did follow it up. Hitori still struggles with the same issue. She constantly stops herself from doing things just because she thinks it might be overstepping what she's supposed to do. And I've been writing this script instead of going to the party down the hall from me because for some reason I have this feeling that people don't want me to. Even though I've hung out with these people before and they were nothing but fun and welcoming, there's just one part of my brain holding me back. And because of that, Bocchi really hits this sweet spot for me of wanting a character to do something, to go interact with people, but I know that I probably wouldn't either. Instead of just directly talking to people, like Hitori, I have tried to find connections by showing off parts of myself which I thought might appeal to someone else's interests or identity, in an attempt to get them to approach me first. This isn't always a bad thing. It's not embarrassing or weird or bad to bring your guitar to school or try to talk to people who have similar interests as you, but it might be a bit much to play your death metal over the school speakers to find those musically interested people, or post controversial political opinions on your Instagram account in 6th grade in order to find people who cared about the same stuff I did. The name for this YouTube channel was made up mostly as an appeal to a group identity I was feeling at the time. And like Hitori, I've never had a lot of creativity when it comes to usernames. Maybe I'll change the channel name sometime, I don't know. There's so much more to Bocchi than just those last 2 paragraphs. Hitori's thoughts spiraling into theories that her friends secretly don't like her or are going to abandon her, suddenly gaining ambitious goals which seem to never materialize, trying to escape certain events due to anxiety despite having been sure it would be cool just minutes before, thinking that maybe you should just live in the digital world because that seems to be where you've gained the most connections, feeling like you're intruding on stuff for no good reason, or that you're actually doing things purely out of a selfish desire for attention. These are just pieces of this character's personality which are so easily relatable. And I know for a fact this isn't like an experience unique to me that I'm just grasping at straws in order to relate to a cute anime girl. Lots of people relate to Bocchi and all the other fictional characters I've mentioned, and so many more that I haven't mentioned. How do I know this? 1. Because someone had to write the fucking story. Stories and characters aren't made up in a vacuum. They are always in some way reflective of the real world. And in a story as grounded as this one, it's obvious that the characters are based on or related to things that real people have experienced. 2. People on the internet talk about how they relate to these characters. They're not lying, they're not making up their experiences or something, and they're not just projecting themselves onto characters. You don't have to trust that everyone is acting truthfully because at least some of them are, and you should let them emotionally engage with media. 3. Very early on in the show, I knew that I wanted my socially anxious sister to watch it, and all my introverted friends. And like everyone actually, because based on myself, I know that this show is at least a good representation of my own experience, and so it will likely be representative of other similar people's experiences as well. And through that good representation of a real life struggle, it tells some important things to both people who are similar to Hitori and people who aren't similar to Hitori. So if you relate to Hitori, what are you supposed to do with that? Okay. So, the show does a very good job of getting into Hitori's head in order to show the viewer why she acts the way she does. This has been discussed, I've said this already. However, the viewer is out of her head enough to recognize that her perspective of others is warped, especially that of her friends. The audience can see that, despite what her brain might tell her sometimes, Hitori's friends are not out to get her. They aren't doing things with the intention of hurting her. I remember in high school, I didn't feel like I had a real close group of friends until my senior year. And even though they were always great people, I had some of the best times ever with them, and I still love them, I couldn't stop myself from having those irrational fears that they secretly hated me and were scheming to destroy me or something. If you have those same kinds of thoughts as Hitori, Bocchi the Rock demonstrates why your brain is a lying bitch. Your friends care about you, they want to do what they can to support you, and even if they messed up and forgot to text you, if they really are good friends, then they didn't do that because they wanted to hurt you. They made an honest mistake and will make up for it. Plus, the show gives an example of what you deserve out of your friends. Obviously, there's probably not many friend groups who are as ideal as this one. They aren't real, they aren't real, they aren't real, but you should expect your friends to be decent people and do their best to make you feel comfortable around them. Everyone deserves friends like that. Just because you are bad at talking to people does not mean you can only have friends who suck. Real friends will try to be like these girls. And if you don't find yourself relating to Hitori as much, what value is still present in this story? Okay, you fucking extroverts, look at how perfect these girls are. If they were any less awesome, it's very likely they would have ended up completely pushing Hitori away by accident. However, they are pretty much constantly observing how she feels and what she might need in order to feel more welcome. Nijika especially seems good at recognizing when Hitori might be worrying about something and not expressing it, and Kita, as we all know, is a master at giving Hitori some much needed encouragement and shines brighter than the sun. Actually, this doesn't even have to be for just extroverts. That's why Ryo is there. Roy isn't as constantly supportive as the other two, but she clearly has her moments. This is really just how anyone can support socially anxious friends and be a better friend in general. We can make our friends feel more comfortable by being observant of their feelings and create an atmosphere that works to include and encourage instead of accidentally push away. These are valuable ideas that anyone can get out of this show if they are smart and cool enough. However, feeling that sense of relatability allows us to more easily apply them to our own lives. If you let yourself relate to Hitori or anyone else in the show, you can use the story to self-reflect on the specific negative patterns of thought you have and what might help you overcome them in order to have more good friend time. There are important personal lessons here which are going to be strongest if you relate to the characters. Hitori's first act of self-improvement is in the first episode when she decides to start learning guitar after hearing this dude talk on the TV about how he was an introvert in school. Hitori says, "OMG, literally me," and is inspired to learn a new skill, develop a passion, and develop herself in the same way as the guy she relates to. Do you feel it? Do you feel yourself relating to me, relating to an anime girl, relating to a guy on TV? The story is aware of its own role as an introvert relatable show and recognizes its ability to point its audience towards improvement, development which leads to a higher probability of making friends, which is good. Boom, that's my point. I should probably do my comp sci assignment that's due tomorrow. Actually, today now. Like with anything, it's important that we are smart about the characters we relate to, as the way we see ourselves in relation to characters affects how we perceive ourselves and interact with the external world. However, just because some people latch onto strange identities does not mean that it is wrong to see yourself in any character at all. Recognizing how you are similar to others, whether they are fictional, real, or schizophrenic hallucinations, is valid and valuable. Additionally, we need to be smart about what our entertainment media is trying to tell us about ourselves when we relate to fictional characters. Is Patrick Bateman being portrayed as good or bad, and for what reasons? What are the presented causes of Shinji's mental state, and how does that relate to my own life? What kinds of thoughts are currently hurting Hitori, and what methods of overcoming them does the show propose? And finally, are the ideas presented by the story actually good? If implemented, will they actually improve people's lives? I think there are a lot of good, helpful ideas in stories, and my goal is to find more of them and present them. That way, when people relate to a character's struggle, maybe I'll be able to help them understand how to move forward, even if it's just a little bit. Because I know how much that has meant to me, that feeling of relating to a fictional character. That's pretty much how I was going to end this video at first, and I have already said 5,000 words, but Omori is a video game about the truth. Neon Genesis Evangelion and A Silent Voice are two anime that I watched when I was first getting into the medium. I considered them my top 2 favorites for a while, and they're still in my favorites. The end of Evangelion is probably my favorite movie ever. It used to be A Silent Voice, but then I got a box set of the manga for Christmas, and I loved that even more than Naoko Yamada's audiovisual masterpiece. But I watched those for the first time when I was 16. I didn't understand all the nuances of A Silent Voice. I certainly didn't understand understand Evangelion, but I do know why I liked both of those series so much. Primarily, it was the main characters. I liked how they were nervous around others and bad at talking to people, because I was like that too. I always had some friends, but I always felt like I was bad at holding a conversation. I felt like I never really belonged in any friend group, and I liked a lot of characters who were like that. But there was a thought creeping through my mind all that time. I'm not really like these characters. Sure, we share some similar traits, but they have those because they were abandoned by their dad or they were relentlessly bullied as children. I'm like this for like no reason. All I'm doing is reaching to make characters seem like they are literally me. While watching Bocchi the Rock, I really appreciated the fact that Hitori didn't have some traumatic backstory that caused her to become nervous around people and stuff. Instead, her natural tendency to try to not disturb others and her low self-confidence led her to be isolated, and this isolation over many years left her social skills undeveloped, and she slowly built up greater social anxiety. I liked this mostly just because it paralleled my own experiences more closely. So many of the best portrayals of social isolation have that kind of trauma as the start of the character's social problems, but some people aren't like that. Some people weren't bullied, abused, or abandoned. Some people just kind of naturally developed to be bad at socializing. Some people are just naturally nervous around others and happen to not grow up in the perfect environment to foster their social development. Some people are me, and maybe those YouTube comments were right. Maybe I really do just like characters more when they are more like me. Am I really just chasing after whatever character's life is most like my own? All the other sections in this video were actually a defense mechanism. I overproject onto characters all the time, and I know it. I know I can't make it through a story without thinking about which character I am. I know that sometimes I like idealizing my own personal growth by thinking of myself as Simone or Guts. It makes me feel cool or understood, almost like I belong with these characters. But I'm not them. I'm none of these characters. So how real is my connection to them? I always had friends around, but I was barely ever truly comfortable around them. They were different from me, and that made me unsure of how to talk to them a lot of the time. How could I really belong if I wasn't just like them? The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is a system of sorting people into 16 different personality types. You might know it from the 16 Personalities website with the 4 letters and cute little characters, even though this test isn't really how MBTI works, but I won't get into that here. I am obsessed with personality tests. I don't know why they interest me so much, but I think a big part of why I enjoy them is trying to find people and characters who are like me. With MBTI, I go through this cycle of finding a certain type that I'm more convinced is closer to me than the others, and then I look at all the characters with that same type and think about what traits I share with them and which I don't. I read about why people think they fit into whatever type they assign to them, analyzing their ways of thinking and decision making, finding which aspects I think are similar to my own experience and which ones aren't, slowly learning more about this convoluted system which tries to achieve the impossible task of simplifying a concept as complicated as personality. Ah yes, the personality types of dinosaurs. And as I get deeper into the lore, eventually there's some new piece of information that makes me question if I really fit into the box I place myself in, and then maybe I find a new box and start all of that over. But also, as I've learned more about MBTI and other personality stuff like the Enneagram and socionics and shit, I think I've realized that as I analyze these characters, trying to find which ones I can say I'm the same type as, ones that I can say are literally me, instead, they are all different from me in some way. But at the same time, in everyone, I can find a piece of myself, however small. Within every personality type, I have found characters with traits or struggles which I relate to. I have found characters who fell into traps which I thought I might also be susceptible to, and I have found characters who I could look up to because they overcame the same struggles I was dealing with. Even when looking at each of the different personality types in their pure fundamental forms, I find myself relating to aspects of all of them. Everyone is literally me in some way. When someone says they relate to a character, post a meme about how similar they are, or make a literally me anime characters edit on YouTube, no matter how silly it might seem to you, we have to remember that there is genuine emotion behind that. There is a real person self-reflecting, developing their understanding of the world, and expressing themselves. Bo Burnham, White Woman's Instagram. We shouldn't shame people for being in their feelings while watching Cowboy Bebop. However, for those of us who already knew all that stuff, we have to remember that while focusing on relatable characters is good, it can be kind of limiting. I'm definitely not as similar in personality to the other Bocchi girls, but there are still useful things to recognize in them. Kita wants to encourage others and is always trying to be optimistic, but she can be unrealistic. When she does something wrong, she can be too hard on herself, and instead of admitting her mistake and improving, she flakes out and leaves. Blonde girl wants to achieve success as a way of giving back to what she is thankful for, but her over-eagerness about progressing the band leads her to sometimes overlook the feelings of others. Ryo is fiercely independent and aspires to live her truth and express herself authentically no matter what, and her deadpan humor and self-confidence is hilarious to the audience, but she is at times too out of line from the mindsets of others, making her appear possibly inconsiderate or arrogant, or leading her to do things that just aren't in tune with others. Nah, I'm just making shit up. We all know Ryo is flawless. Because of these more socially competent characters being as fleshed out as they are, the story is able to kind of implicitly do two very important things. More obviously, with the focus on Hitori, it delivers a relatable story for anyone who's just kind of shy or actually has social anxiety. It has a lot of humor, but also manages to be emotional by giving us this touching and realistic story of someone developing their self-confidence and learning how to have friends. But in doing so, it also delivers this implicit second message that you don't have to be just like others in order to relate to and connect with them. Bocchi often worries about how she isn't like the others in terms of personality. Nijika and Kita are clearly more extroverted, and while she initially thinks Ryo is another quiet and shy ally, just like her for real, she soon realizes that Ryo isn't like her. Ryo isn't nervous around other people, she just isn't very interested in socializing. But despite how much Hitori worries about this, it's clear to the viewer that it doesn't matter. They can all be friends despite their differences, and they all have useful things to learn from each other. Even if they aren't all literally her for real like she might have wanted at first, Hitori has found a place for herself. She just needs to realize this. It seems to me that most people are looking for some kind of collective identity. They are consciously or subconsciously searching for a group that they fit into of people that they know are similar to them in some way, and they are doing this in order to more easily understand others as well as themselves and connect. One way we do this is by comparing ourselves to fictional characters, finding which ones seem pretty similar to us, and then expressing the realization of that similarity within the fiery pits of this digital hellscape. This is not a bad thing. I think this video should make it obvious that I think this is mostly a good thing, but I think this search for a collective has held me back in some ways, both in real-life socialization and in relating to fictional characters. I guess now that I'm writing this conclusion paragraph, it's time for a little more self-reflection. I'm a very sensitive person and I overthink stuff a lot. That should be obvious. One of the main inspirations for this video was a YouTube comment that was most certainly not malicious and likely not even a joke at my expense. But yeah, what I wanted to say is that I actually started writing this video before I watched Bocchi the Rock. The intro is adapted from this Google Doc I use to rant about shit when it's starting to clog up my brain, and that one rant was inspired not by that one comment, but from a trend that I think I've noticed over the past year. This trend of making fun of people for relating to characters slowly developing into an attitude that it's weird and bad to do that at all. I realize now that I was reacting negatively towards this, in large part because it felt like an attack on me, but also it's a trend that is anti-people openly expressing their thoughts and feelings about entertainment media and feeling valid and welcome while doing so. And I don't want a world where people aren't open about their feelings towards art. I don't even know how true my interpretation of this trend is, but I kept feeling that twinge of people's feelings being invalidated, and here we are, I guess, more than 3 months later. For the first few episodes of Bocchi, I was just becoming more and more convinced that I could use it purely to demonstrate this idea I already had that self-reflecting through relatable characters is valuable and good, and that people shouldn't feel bad for doing so. Sometimes the way people do this is kind of goofy, but we have to remember that there's still a person with some genuine emotion behind it, Bo Burnham White Woman's Instagram, and I think I did that. I still believe that. But Bocchi the Rock also helped me realize something that I think is more valuable, an idea that wasn't already strongly entrenched in my mind. Maybe the amount I relate to a specific fictional character doesn't actually matter that much. What matters is what I am able to get from a character, what I can learn from them. And while having relatable experiences might make it easier to learn those lessons, really, I don't need them to have had all these similar experiences to me in order to learn from them. There are things to be learned from Hitori, especially if you are like her in any way, but you should also be looking at the other characters to see what you can learn from them. Nijika is a personification of God's heavenly love in an anime form, and it would be arrogant to believe you could achieve her full greatness for yourself, but just because you see yourself in Hitori doesn't mean there aren't things to learn from Nijika. Dorito Girl does so many things that are just exemplary of being a good friend and a good person in general. There are traits to aspire to achieve in Roy and Ikuyo as well. You should aspire to be optimistic and encouraging like Kita, and you should aspire to live and express yourself authentically like Ryo. There are things to learn in so many characters. There's so much to look up to, and you should be careful to not let your sense of self get in the way of making yourself a better person. That's what Bocchi the Rock is about. They are all just like me. Non-derogatory, aspirational. I guess this tunnel vision of looking for characters I specifically relate to comes from a desire to be understood and feel like I belong. The same thing that we try to get out of real-life connections and relationships. But forming connections with others doesn't come from just literally being similar to other people. It's more like we understand each other and vibe together despite being different. There's some simple shared interests that initially bring the group together, and beyond that, if you're with the right people, nothing else really matters. I understand the feeling of thinking you don't truly belong in your friend groups because you feel like you need to figure out how to conform and make sure people like you, or you're still searching for the group of people most like yourself. Those are both things I have felt. But that feeling of belonging shouldn't come from you literally being similar to everyone else. It's a feeling you get when others accept you for who you are. You just need to do your best to open yourself up to that feeling.
個性捨てたら死んでるのと一緒だよ。下手でも楽しく弾くことだけは心がけよ。
I haven't celebrated my birthday with people other than my family for a long time. It's been a while since I had a group of friends who I felt would want to do that. But this year, I went to watch fucking Cocaine Bear in theaters with these people I met at university. I feel like I belong with them. And it's not because I found a group of people who were just like me or I changed myself to match them. It's because I let myself be genuine around them and they made me feel welcome. If you have friends who make you feel like you belong with them, you should do your best to make them feel the same. And if you don't have friends right now, there are too many people in this world for there to be no one that will accept you. Keep looking. That's what Bocchi the Rock is about.